set, dressing us up for success as we open up the Fox 2 Job Shop with George Piliouras. George is an expert on presentations, speaking in public, motivation, and I asked him to come in to help us look better in the interview. As we approach the interview, George, what kind of frame of mind should we be putting ourselves into?
Hey, Murray, great to be back. What I tell people all the time is to speak from the interviewer's point of view and let the interviewer win all the time. They have an agenda that they're screening applicants, and so they know what they're trying to fulfill. And when you think to make them win versus what they want to hear from you, what your goals are and your ambitions, how that helps the company fulfill their job goals, they will end up winning, and you'll end up being very personal and transparent with them.
Explain that a little bit more detail for me. Let them win. Does that mean I have to say yes to everything they're saying? Do I continue to nod like this? Or?
No, because then you just look like a puppet. You look robotic. Be yourself. Be honest, like as if you're just speaking to someone you actually really know. And what I tell people, where you can almost change the dynamic of the interview, where you basically say to them, what would the ideal candidate have to do to succeed and excel in this job? What that mentally does is it already means you've accepted the job and they've offered it to you, and now you get the interview to tell you what success looks like. Then you can speak to that, which means listen very carefully, because basically you're playing back to them what they want to hear. That's how the interviewer wins, and that crosses paths tremendously.
All right, now that's very interesting, because we want to come across authoritative, but we don't want to seem like we're overbearing to people.
Right. Well, it's interesting. We live in a very technological world. We're on Facebook, we're Twittering, we do everything like that. When we get on a one-on-one interview, sometimes there's a barrier. People are so used to looking at their phones or their laptops. Just be yourself, be one-on-one, have great eye contact with people. Ask them interesting things about them, like, ask them about employees who have succeeded in their job, etc. And that enables you to be yourself versus just somebody who's going to nod their head. They don't want that in today's marketplace.
All right, I like the question that you gave us before when you said, ask the interviewer what would the ideal candidate need to advance at this job. But when you ask that, you really need to follow up very carefully with listening and to speaking to what you have just heard. So you have to act fast, George, and you have to turn that around to your advantage and say, hey, I have those qualities for you.
You're right, absolutely. And when you get them to talk about what the ideal candidate would have to do to excel in that job, then you speak to your skill sets, and then all of a sudden you become a human being versus somebody who feels like they're on guard and on point in the interview, and they get to know you as a person, as just a human being who's answering those questions, and which means you have to really listen carefully.
Everybody likes to hear somebody tell them a story.
Right.
We can be storytellers when we go in there.
Right. Storytelling is huge in interviewing, because we think, as human beings, we think as storytellers. What are some obstacles that you've overcome in your life? What makes you different? What are some things that people don't know about you? Have there been some challenges personally or professionally? When you learn how to engage with those things, you become a human being to them, and people really like that when they're interviewing. When I would interview people and people would share with me personal stories, not like pity party, but real heart stories about overcoming obstacles and how, because of that, I know how to work hard. I don't take anything for granted, etc. And then all of a sudden, you'd be surprised how that changes the dynamic in the interview.
And that's interesting, because that question about obstacles often comes up in a job interview. Tell me about an obstacle you had and how you conquered it.
Right.
And that can be an entree for you to do your story.
Absolutely. And many times it does happen, because everybody wants to say that everything is great, I'm a team player, etc. But when you talk about, like, sometimes I think of my past, I didn't grow up with anything. I never take anything for granted. And I always, going above and beyond is the norm for me. Showing up early is on time. And things like that, when you have a great work ethic, and we all have that, and to convey that in a story, you'll connect through with that interviewer like other people will not do that.
Thank you, George Piliouras. George Piliouras, Creative Communications from Rochester.
Great. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being here.
I'll see you tonight on Fox 2 News beginning at 5. By the way, all the information we talked about and more on our website with a link to his, myfoxdetroit.com, right there in the job shop. Hear the music. That must mean we're revving up the engine.